And then finally I had the neuropsych assessment. I knew in myself that I was affected cognitively, but I didn't know how to articulate it or what help I needed. So finally I had that test, and then it's a really long time to get the test back and they explain it. And for me, it's my working memory is impacted. I was telling everyone it's my short-term memory because I literally couldn't remember what I did yesterday or where I parked the car once I got driving again after a month, of course.
This is the Recovery After Stroke podcast with Bill Gassiamis, helping you navigate recovery after stroke.
231 of the Recovery After Stroke podcast. My guest today is Yvette Adams, who instinctively knew she was having a stroke, but was convinced out of it, not by one, but two medical professionals. To learn more about my guests and to get links to their social media and other relevant links, and to download a full transcript of the entire interview, please go to recoveryafterstroke.com/episodes. If you would like to support this podcast, the best way to do it is to leave the show a 5-star review and a few words about what the show means to you on iTunes and Spotify. If you are watching on YouTube, comment below the video. Like this episode, and to get notifications of future episodes, subscribe to the show on the platform of your choice. Sharing the show with family and friends on social media will make it possible for people who may need this type of content to find it easier, and that may make a massive difference to someone that is on the road to recovery after their own experience with stroke. Yvette Adams, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Under trying circumstances.
Yes, we all have them, right?
Me too. Well, you were at the beach and then you got distracted with a friend of yours, chit-chatting about amazing stuff probably. And then you got home and you were locked out of the house.
That's right. That's how my morning started. But I did do a 6K walk, so that's good.
Awesome. Tell me a little bit about what happened to you.
In regards to the stroke, I presume you mean? Yep.
Yeah.
So it was this year in April 30th, one of those dates we don't forget. I was at yoga class one-on-one. She's actually a registered nurse, and it was right at the start of the class, and she went to hand me a small ball with the spikes to put under my hip and roll it out. And I just couldn't take it, but my coordination went. And the ball dropped to the ground, and I thought, that's weird. And then I went, my arm feels really disconnected from my whole body. And I remember feeling all along here was pins and needles. And then I must have looked funny because she said, are you okay? And I meant to go back and say, I feel funny, but the words didn't come out right. They were quite garbled. And then my vision went on this side, and then the headache started on this side. And I thought something was wrong, but she's a registered nurse. So I did actually, even the next words I spoke did come out. I said, you don't think it's a stroke, do you? I actually thought to say that because I've had strokes in my family. And she said, can you do that and stick your tongue out? And I could. And then she said, can you raise both arms? And I could. She said, oh, it's not a stroke then, even though she's a registered nurse. And I actually continued to do the rest of the class, albeit quite gently, for an hour with a cracking headache and my vision not quite there, but just thinking must be like a bit of a faint episode or something. Then I drove home, which isn't very far, but the vision in one eye was still not great. And I told my partner what had happened. And I said, what do you reckon? What should I do? He said, we're going to the hospital. So thankfully he said that, but to be honest, the hospital overlooked it too. So I was there all day. They said maybe migraine. My face was a bit droopy on one side. I slept a lot of it because the headache was just too bad. I wasn't hungry. I felt sick. All these signs of stroke, but no one really took it as that. Took them till about 5 p.m. that day to do a CT scan, and they turned up nothing. So they sent me home and said, follow up with your GP. So that night I came home and I was full of liquid from the CT scan, rushed into the toilet, cracked my foot because my spatial awareness was completely out, and actually broke my foot. So stroke with a broken foot now, still undiagnosed. Monday, I rang the doctor diligently, couldn't get in till Thursday. All that week felt pretty rubbish, irritable, sight, just not myself. Went to the doctor, he ordered an MRI, and it was another 24 hours before we got the results of that. He said, you've had multiple strokes. So that was 3 almost points of failure. He nearly didn't get the MRI. He said, we will, we won't. But they did a CT scan already. And then he said straight to hospital. And then it was all sorts of tests, and people, I think, feeling a little bit embarrassed they didn't pick it up earlier.
I'm just sitting here, every time you say the next thing, I'm just thinking, oh my God, the next thing, oh my God. Your instinct was to say it was a stroke, but then you go to the experts to get confirmation or help or support, and they tell you it's not. So you kind of have to go with them, since you're not a nurse or a doctor.
That's right.
And it's a really difficult thing. So what are your are you going through these difficult physical times, like for that whole week, and are you thinking, man, I should have done something more about this, or I still think this is a threat? Like, what are you thinking? What's going on in your head, even though they're telling you it's not?
Well, I am thinking, I feel really frustrated because I feel like something's wrong, and you guys are the experts, like you say, and you're telling me it's not. I mean, they're saying, have you had a migraine before? And I said, no. And they said, well, we think it's a migraine. And then I had to question it and say, but would your face go droopy with a migraine? Would your hand not work? And they said, oh, it could be Bell's palsy. So I'm like, okay, what's Bell's palsy? Like Googling it and stuff. But I knew in my family there were strokes. So my great-grandmother, who I think I've got some of their genes, I kind of look like that side of the family, she actually died instantly at 37 of a stroke. And then her daughter, my grandmother, same thing, very strong connection to. She died of a stroke, although she was 69. So that was the only reason I thought maybe a stroke, because of that sort of family history. But yeah, I guess I had a registered nurse, a hospital, and a doctor. Pretty much the doctor, to be honest, belittled me. You know, I said, I was talking funny. He said, yeah, but all Kiwis talk funny. And I was sitting there thinking,
Jesus,
this isn't real funny. Like, I feel like rubbish. And when I look back, it was so obvious. You know, I went into that MRI, and it's like I knew something was very wrong, because I actually burst into tears in the MRI. It's like my body just went, you're about to discover something that's going to blow your mind. And then even coming out of there, and I'd driven myself there by myself, I walked into the reception, and I'd forgotten to put my bra on. I'd forgotten to put my jewelry on. I was so not with it, yet here I was driving a car because I didn't know I'd had a stroke. So I guess the lesson in that is, if you feel like something's wrong, yeah, keep going to medical professionals until you feel like you are getting the diagnosis that sits well with you, or that seems right.
It's such a hard thing. You did all the right things, and it still didn't turn out right. I've interviewed heaps of people who have been down this same road, and unfortunately waited way too long. Well, didn't wait way too long, got help way too long after they should have, and as a result, that left them with deficits that they could have avoided, and a road to recovery that's way longer than necessary, and all the issues that come with that. You kind of got to give the doctors and the nurses and all them a break a little bit, but still, to say things like, but all Kiwis talk funny because you're from New Zealand and you happen to be living in Australia, as a way to justify not doing something, is such a weird thing. Like, his next question should have been, not, you were speaking funny, how? Like, how did your voice change?
He was very embarrassed, actually. I think as well, because of what I had multiple infarcts. So I had them all over my brain, and I'd actually been having them for 2 weeks, unbeknownst to me. I'd been to New Zealand after all the COVID lockdowns to visit my family and friends, and I was, desperate to go, possibly the air pressure, and possibly doing more exercise than usual. But as it turned out, I had a hole in my heart, which is how I was having the strokes. But when I said my symptoms, they didn't add up for him, the GP. He said, because I said my vision went on my left, but my pain was in my right temple, but my arm on my right side went. So that's where I think he went, it can't be a stroke because it would all be on one side, right? But when the diagnosis came out, it made complete sense. You would lose your vision because there is one over on that side as well as on the right side.
Okay, yeah. But still, yeah, droopy face, talking strange, arm weakness or weird sensation. Like, you know, they are the 3 of the 4. Face,
no, you only need 2 of those.
Yeah, face and arm. Oh, well, 1 is enough. And face and arm, speech. The last one is time. It's just time. It's not anything else. It's just do something.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, they were really onto it once I got to the main hospital. But yeah, I just wasted about 5 days, and who knows whether I've got some cognitive deficits that could have been avoided now, maybe. But I mean, yeah, they diagnosed the hole in the heart, and it still took another month before I got the surgery to close that. And so I did feel like a bit of a ticking time bomb walking around thinking, will I have another one? Because there's nothing stopping another clot going through my heart right now. So that was quite a scary month and a half, an anxious time.
They would have put you on blood thinners, I imagine, during that time.
They did immediately. Yeah. High dose, and they put me on clopidogrel as well, and they wanted to put me on a third thing, and I guess something I learned was to question everything, because I went, what is each of these for? Like, you know, if you're the medical experts, fine, but of course I've lost a bit of faith from this experience and some others. What is this for? And they said, oh, it's for high cholesterol. And I had to say, but I don't have high cholesterol. And I think they just said it's standard stroke procedure were their words. But I said, but I'm not a standard stroke patient. You know, I'm not older, overweight, you know, got all high cholesterol. So why would you prescribe that to me? So I negotiated them from 3 medications to 2 immediately. And I've since negotiated down to just aspirin because I just didn't feel it was right for me or necessary.
So the cholesterol medication, and then what was the other one, the third one going to be?
Clopidogrel was a antiplatelet drug of some kind. Yeah, but I mean, it says if you read all the side effects, headaches, fatigue, all these things, which I definitely had post-stroke. And I just wanted to eliminate the medication and try and work out what am I left with, or how am I really feeling without this medication. And so I questioned the cardiologist as to whether it was absolutely necessary. And he said I could come off it.
I was speaking to somebody in a coaching environment years ago, and one of the first things in the initial stages of the conversation and the coaching was just trying to get a bit of a background understanding of the health and well-being of this person, and I got told that they were taking a medication. I'm pretty sure it was birth control, and they'd been taking it for about 15 years, and it wasn't for birth control purposes back then. It was to settle something else. I think it was a hormonal thing. And then I just asked, like, so what's the situation about this medication? What are you going to be doing moving forward? How are you speaking with your doctors about it? She goes, oh, no, I haven't spoken to my doctors about it for about 6 years. And I was like, okay, any reason why? Oh, no, I just haven't been. And I just take it. And I'm like,
question everything, right?
It's been a long time.
You have to, yeah.
Do you have this issue anymore? I don't think so. And it's like, wow, so detached from anything else that you're just still swallowing this medication that you've been doing for 15 years because somebody told you 15 years ago to do it, and you haven't followed up and you haven't done any of those things. And nobody has also thought to go, maybe we should be looking up, following up these people and every so often see how they're going and what they're doing, and send them a notification to maybe do a checkup or an appointment or something. So the first thing that happened after that conversation was she made an appointment, saw her GP. They both worked out that she doesn't need to take it anymore, and she stopped taking it.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Did her health improve?
Yeah. Well, yeah, the process, you know, it eliminated one thing out of the many things that needed to adjust or change or resolve or whatever you want to call it. And it's one less thing that you need to do and swallow and impact your biology with, right? And I'm not against medication, absolutely not against it. But cholesterol medication, when the reason you had a stroke was a PFO, of course, I would question that as well. That's ridiculous. And then another medication for platelets, because sometimes platelets cause clotting. And it's like, again, why was the clotting occurring? And they're for them, they're prevention medications. But I know people that have been on cholesterol medication forever, and they've never had to really be on it, but they're told to do it, and they just do it, and then they just go through this process. There are long-term side effects of all medication, and you need to know what they are. And I'm not advocating for anyone to stop medication based on what I'm saying and what we're discussing right now with Yvette. But if you've been taking some medication and you've just been doing it, go and get some advice. Go and
or if it
up.
doesn't feel right for you and you're having bad side effects, question it, explore it.
So how long were you in hospital, and what did you leave hospital with? What kind of challenges after the first stay with the stroke and the clot symptoms?
I wasn't in hospital long at all because it was a 24-hour diagnosis. I mean, I felt pretty poked and prodded. I had a lot of blood tests, a lot of all sorts of tests. And then they went, we think it's this hole in your heart. Once they did the bubble test, they call it, where they throw bubble through your heart chamber and it goes through, they go, there's a hole. So they did do a little OT test on me to see how I made tea and toast in the kitchen and how I was sort of functioning with my daily living. But at that stage, I'm really very lucky. I can talk. I wasn't walking then because of the broken foot. They gave me a nice moon boot, which really helped because I was in a lot of pain. It was fully displaced, my toe. And they sent me home with the medication and said, you'll book in for the heart surgery publicly, pretty much. Just take it easy. So that was it. So at that stage, I hadn't had any, I guess, what do you call it, neuropsych assessments or anything like that. Then just because it was still a little bit COVID-y and just getting into the system, and there's huge demand and there's delays and there's staff off sick, it took a while to get into rehab and get assessments done. And to be honest, that was fairly bumpy. Not saying, I'm angry at the system. It's just the journey it was for me. I think I had 3 OTs in over 3 months. So you're not really getting any continuity of care. And then finally I had the neuropsych assessment. I knew in myself that I was affected cognitively, but I didn't know how to articulate it or what help I needed. So finally I had that test, and then it's a really long time to get the test back and they explain it. And for me, it's my working memory is impacted. I was telling everyone it's my short-term memory because I literally couldn't remember what I did yesterday or where I parked the car once I got driving again after a month, of course.
If you've had a stroke and you're in recovery, you'll know what a scary and confusing time it can be. You're likely to have a lot of questions going through your mind. Like, how long will it take to recover? Will I actually recover? What things should I avoid in case I make matters worse? Doctors will explain things, but obviously you've never had a stroke before. You probably don't know what questions to ask. If this is you, you may be missing out on doing things that could help speed up your recovery. If you're finding yourself in that situation, stop worrying and head to recoveryafterstroke.com, where you can download a guide that will help you. It's called 7 Questions to Ask Your Doctor About Your Stroke. These 7 questions are the ones Bill wished he'd asked when he was recovering from a stroke. They'll not only help you better understand your condition, they'll help you take a more active role in your recovery. Head to the website now, recoveryafterstroke.com, and download the guide. It's free.
Little things like that. So, my working memory, which affects my planning and organizing. What else? My attention overall, so concentrating on things is difficult. And I actually almost wonder if I was perhaps a bit ADHD before this happened, and now it's really exacerbated as well. So I can lose my train of thought and things quite easily. So, I mean, I think I was pretty high functioning before. So I'm sort of average or poor in some areas now, and they gave me some stuff to work on. But for me, I really, I notice the difference. Yeah, and I get quite frustrated. Fatigue and pacing is also an issue for me, and headaches. So they're all invisible things. And again, I'm so grateful and lucky, and I don't want to sound like I'm, what's the word, hard done by, because I'm very aware I'm really very lucky. But by the same token, it's changed everything in my life. It's been a very difficult adjustment for me from what I was doing to what I do now. Is very, very different, and been hard to accept emotionally. And then, life adjustments, very, very difficult. The fatigue for me can be debilitating. I can be laid up on the couch for 3 days in a row. I can't even sit up. I'm that buggered. So I feel like I've got this little battery, and every morning I wake up and go, what am I going to do with it? So just now I've done the walk, and I'll probably make dinner soon, first thing in the morning, because that's how I get it done. Work out any tasks I need to do that need my concentration, filling in forms or things, or organizing myself for the week, being a Sunday. And then that'll be it. I'll be laid up on the couch probably later this afternoon, because that's just the way it is for me at the moment. But I still like to think of myself as being in recovery 6 months.
You've got people that are saying they're in recovery 10 years out. I'm one of them.
Yeah, really.
Because everything you describe, the things that I still go through, they're not as bad as they were at the beginning. At the acute phase, it's a little worse. But as your brain heals and gets better and better and better, you get back to yourself more and more and more. And then what you find is every once in a while you just get wiped out, and it's like, oh, I remember this, I don't like this. And you go through the process of, okay, do nothing for the next 2 days, cancel all the appointments, have nothing to do. And I was the same. I love what you said about your battery. It's that big, and what am I going to allocate it to? And that's what I used to do as well. I used to have it was really important for me when the kids, when they were younger and still at school, that would come home from school and my wife would come home from work, I would have a meal ready for them. So I would do almost nothing to make sure that I could get the ingredients and that meal cooked and ready for dinner when everyone got
the big task.
Yeah, when everyone was in the house at 6:30 p.m. And then I would be wiped for the rest of the day. And I haven't done anything the whole day leading to that, anything compared to my previous version of me. And the other thing you said about the car and not knowing what's going on, and you need cognitive, you need a neuropsychologist to test your cognitive awareness and your cognitive deficits, actually, to see where they're at. And because you're the stroke survivor and you don't know how to articulate that, you're just in the la-la land, in this spaced out zone. You don't know, you can't articulate that help that you need. Like, the exact thing that you need is to say, I need help with these things, but I actually can't get it out. And it took me I think maybe within about 6 or 7 weeks of counseling with my psychologist, after the first and second bleeds, she said to me, have you had a neuropsych assessment? And I said, I don't know what that is. She could tell that I was talking differently. I couldn't string sentences together. I couldn't remember what I was about to say. Even though I was about to say it, it would go in the middle of the conversation. I would just lose my train of thought. Exactly what you said. And because she said that, my wife and I then made an appointment with a neuropsych. But because we didn't, again, we'd never been through this before, we didn't know to go and just pay a neuropsych the $500 that it takes to get an assessment. Because I didn't know that, we waited 9 months to see a neuropsych in the public system. And by the time 9 months came, a lot of those things had come back, and that had been, therefore my assessment had been inconclusive, and they didn't recommend anything afterwards.
But you've also had 9 months of frustration and lack of help, which is just so difficult for you.
Yeah, really hard, really, really hard. So all the things that you mentioned are very similar to what a lot of stroke survivors will mention. And then you're going through all these changes, all these weird things, and then you're dealing with the emotional side.
That's difficult.
You know?
I actually think it was my psychologist. You learn all these new terms, don't you? Who said, I think you've got emotional lability. And I've had to go, what's that? So yeah, she explained it to me, and anyone can Google it, but it's when you, the part of your brain that's affected affects your emotional regulation. And for everyone that can present differently, it can be anger, it can be outbursts, it can be over laughing uncontrollably in weird places. For me, it's sadness. I can just burst into tears for no real reason. And I've always been a bit of a tomboy, and I'm quite a strong person. I'm not that kind of person. But one example from last week is I went for a swim in the ocean with my partner. I love the ocean. I love my partner. I think I was just tired. So tiredness then connects to the emotional ability. And I just burst into tears. And he said, what's wrong? And I'd say, I don't know. I just can't help this. And it's a horrible feeling not being in control of your emotions. And that can stop your socializing because you're worried that that will happen and that will be embarrassing. And yeah, if you don't know the people that well and they can't see you have any deficits or know that you've had a stroke, they just go, what's wrong with this girl? She's just crying for no reason. Is she drunk? And I don't even drink, and all these things. So then the socializing gets tricky as well.
The pseudobulbar affect. That's another name for it. Pseudobulbar affect. And it does, and it's very common, and you hear about it from most stroke survivors. And I had that. And I'm a bloke's bloke, and then all of a sudden I'm a crying ball of a mess.
So yours was tears too, hey?
Yeah. And over nothing, over the cat tripping over, or I don't know what.
Bad movies, no good.
Yeah, sad movies immediately. And recently, even though I thought I've also done it on stage, presenting, chatting to 200 people. And I always sort of tell myself before the beginning of the presentation, I'm not going to do this today. It's not going to happen today. And I prepare myself, and I get to another point in the presentation that I've never been to, that I've never cried at before, and bang, sure enough, off. I have to compose myself and go again. It makes it okay in a presentation, because if you're talking about stroke and stroke recovery and overcoming adversity, it kind of brings the crowd in, and you have them, but it's not ideal. But recently, I thought I was beyond it and over it and had moved on. My team, which you may have heard of in the Australian Football League, is Collingwood, and they had a cracking season. And we went to follow them in interstate for the last game of the season in New South Wales, and we went and saw them play against Sydney Swans, and they lost. They lost by a couple of points. I was crying in the stadium, but because everyone was so in their own emotions, some of them were going crazy because they won, and the others, me and all my people, were all depressed in their own way. I just looked down.
You looked like a really passionate supporter.
I just turned around, looked down, and just stopped making eye contact with people and cried. And the 2 weeks leading up to it, because I couldn't get to the game, I was watching it at home on the TV, and we had won again by just a few points, just got over the line. I was so emotional. My wife was laughing at me because I was crying at the football. Yeah. At the football. And then the following week, she said to me, so that the second last game of the season, when again they just scraped over the line, and she just looked at me and she said, "Are you going to cry today?" And I had already started crying. Crying.
Yeah.
And I told her to get lost and leave me alone, and we had a laugh about it. But over the football, over a win and a loss at the football. It's something that I couldn't care less about 99.9% of the time.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't stop myself. Anyway.
It's good your wife makes a joke of it, and my kids do too. They've started calling me Dory, like, because I forget things. And it's I don't know what it was the other day. We walked out and I overheard my daughter saying to my son, "Oh, she's just Dory. Like, she just forgets everything now." But it's kind of cute. I'm okay if I'm Dory. At least I'm still alive.
Yeah, absolutely. With my memory, I've got this weird memory thing. So I'll prepare myself in the morning. I've got to get this and that and that, and then I've got to leave the house. And I'll walk out the door, the threshold of the door, and then I'll remember, oh, I forgot this and that, and then I'll go back and get it. And again, it's become a thing that my wife has noticed. What have you forgotten now? And I'm like, I haven't forgotten anything. I'm just going through my process. My process is I've got to go through the threshold of the door, take 2 steps down, and then I've got to come back.
To remember what you actually need.
Yeah, I've got to get my stuff. In the moment of preparing, my preparation cycle is completely out of whack. I can't do it. It doesn't seem to work, the things that I need to do. And one day it might be I forgot my sunnies. The next day it might be I forgot my hat, or just weird things. My food that I make for lunch, I might leave it on the counter and I'll take it. My water bottle. Every day it's something. Every single day. And she's just like, she's just used to it. Yeah, now I just
my partner sits in the car with the engine going and the garage up waiting for me, because I go out, I come back, I go out, I come back. And I make lots of apologies and say, I'm really sorry. It just takes me ages to plan and organize now. I'm sorry. Like, he's always like, it's all right, it doesn't matter. But I can't just leave with everything I need.
It's so bizarre. Now you were, is it your own business? You were involved in your own business?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Technically, I've got 3 businesses, but one's quite an established one and, largish. There's 20 staff and about 40 contractors. And fortunately, I had a 50% shareholder business partner, and she's been very wonderful. She's a very wonderful person, a great friend. She's actually due up here tonight. I'd had a senior manager start only a month prior to the stroke, and rather than, a nice, easy onboarding, it was kind of a swim or sink now. And at the same time, we also hired another guy who had experience running his own agency, who came on as an account manager. So it's a creative marketing agency, and he was a real blessing. So I guess between those 3, they took my rather large workload. It wasn't a one-person job. And I was pretty concerned about that in hospital. I remember crying, saying, I don't know how this is going to work. Like, who's just going to take over my stuff? But nothing like a good old crisis for people to somehow figure it out. And it's worked out really well, I guess, in a really strange way. The strokes made me realize I have actually got the business to a point where I can retire or semi-retire, but I'm in this weird zone of having to just decide, what do I want to do? Am I trying to get back to work? Do I not? I want to make it even, because if I'm out or semi out, I want my business partner to be out, because if we're both getting the same wage. So anyway, there's ongoing discussions, and I think we're big enough now and things are going well enough that we've set it up really well. Thank goodness it happened, I guess, now and not 10 years ago when we were in earlier stages of the business. So thankfully I had those things in place and the business still operates. But I've used the opportunity to simplify a lot of stuff. So get out of stuff if, it's not essential kind of thing. My other business, a training business, where I've actually on this week merged it with the current business, because then I've got the support of all of those staff. And it was a training business. So through COVID, it really suffered. We couldn't run in-person training anywhere in Australia like we had the past 2 years. I was doing a lot of public speaking as well. I was a trainer for Facebook until start of last year. I have done some speaking things. I would like to get back to speaking, I think, because it's short burst and doesn't take too much energy. And I'm trying to figure out how I use my story and my journey to, hopefully inspire others or help others along the way. I do think that's what I'm here for. And I also love property, and that's another thing it's not as time sensitive as, say, client work and things. So I've been kept doing property stuff, but I definitely need help with forms and organizing, and it's not an easy thing and it can be frustrating. But yeah, that's, I guess, how I've pivoted for now. But I'm still trying to find, what makes me happy. That's all brings the money in, but you've got to find happiness. So next year we've got some travel plans. I'll get married. And travel used to bring me a lot of happiness. So I really hope that I can get back out in the world, and my body will allow me to keep walking around and not be lying down and stuff, because we plan to tackle Europe. So my goal right now is to just get as well as I can and figure out my limits and get help of professionals as well to really know myself as well as I can by the time we leave. So yeah, that's all my work stuff, I guess.
Wow, there's heaps going on there. So I had a similar experience with work. My strokes, well, before the strokes, I was whinging and complaining that something wasn't right with the business. I couldn't run it the way I wanted. I couldn't present myself to clients the way I wanted to. I was running it from home. How could I possibly be running it from home? It was before working at home was a thing, right? But I was doing it thinking that it's not a thing. And it's so weird. And then I got sick, and we're at a painting company, a property maintenance company. And I had work to do, and I thought I couldn't run my business from home because it wasn't professional enough and all that type of thing. And then I was running it from my hospital bed that week while I was in hospital.
Wow.
And for the first time, I was working on the business instead of in the business, right? And I had, again, my guys, everyone just seemed to just step up and do everything that I thought they were never going to be able to do. And they just blew it out of the park. And my clients were just cool, and we went with it, and it worked. And then it stopped working after the second bleed, which when you try and kind of drag everyone along with you and things are going okay for a while, it's okay. But when you're not there all the time, things kind of,
wheels can fall off.
Yeah, the wheels can fall off, right? And that's what happened. And then I had another third bleed, and then brain surgery. So it dragged out over 3 years for me. So eventually the kind of business fizzled out and things weren't the best. And then after the third bleed, the fatigue was more debilitating, and the recovery was a lot longer because I had to learn how to walk again and all that kind of stuff. But it gave me that wisdom and that lesson of, I cannot grow this into something unless I'm removed from it, like unless I am one step removed from it and I'm observing it and I'm putting it in motion rather than trying to do everything and be everybody to everything to everyone. And that's still happening now. Like I'm still battling with how I'm going to refine it. And now we've just got to the point where instead of offering 7 or 8 services, we're offering just one service.
Okay.
And
simplifying.
That's simplifying and niching. So it's made it a lot easier for me to get my head around all the stuff that I need to do and to be motivated to do it. And in Melbourne, as soon as I got back on my feet after about 6 or 7 years from all the stroke stuff, then COVID kicked in, and then we had 2 years of pretty much lockdown in Melbourne, and we couldn't do much. So, then we have to deal with all of that. It's been a drama and a half, but we also traveled, and then travel became a priority with the family so that we could have some memories and great experiences and all that kind of stuff, and not put things off until we can't do it later because we're too old or whatever. And I think what you'll find is that if you overthink this, it's going to probably be really difficult. What you got to do is you just got to book in whatever it is that you're going to do, that plan that trip and say it's happening. This is when it's happening.
Yeah.
And then build yourself up as much as you can and do what you have to do to get to the airport. And then you're off.
Deal with it when you're there. I've booked, but I've booked one way at the moment. I'm having to book in chunks because booking the whole lot is just too big of a task.
Yeah.
And just even getting the first booking was tricky because I had Qantas pass, like a credit from a previous trip that didn't go ahead. I've got points. I've got all these things, and I can't just go to a travel agent and say, book it for me, please, because they don't want to deal in points and passes and stuff. So recently I did book over there, but I'm just doing it in chunks, and then another day I've booked the accommodation in Dubai and I've used points, and then the next day I've booked Amsterdam and points. But I do have to book the rest of the trip at some stage, but that's how I'm dealing with it, just biting down into small chunks. But we're going now. I've booked the trip over, but there's no trip back at the moment.
Yeah, well, that's good.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is just get the best insurance you can while you're going to be overseas. And that's the only thing that we did. Like we got the best, most expensive insurance we could possibly get, because we were going to the United States, and I didn't want to be in a situation where I ended up in hospital. And even though I may not have, or well, I didn't, but we kind of thought, well, why risk it? We're going to be so far away from home. We want to be in a position where we can just feel at ease about that one thing, if not everything else. And we got it over the line. And it was hard. I often said to my wife while we were there, forget about tomorrow. I'm not doing anything tomorrow. I'm going to be wiped out. We're not going to go anywhere, see anything. You can go on your own. I'm just going to rest for the day. And then come the morning, I'd be good. I would have had a good sleep, and I'd say, oh, I'm actually good. I'm good to go. We're going to go.
How good's that? And did you find the travel energized you too? Because you're in a different environment and you're having new experiences.
I did. And because we were doing a lot of walking and I wasn't doing a lot of cognitive stuff, my fatigue was different. It was kind of physical fatigue, and there was a lot less kind of cognitive fatigue, because the exercise really does help the brain. The physical movement, and that really helps the brain. You know, you're getting dopamine, you're getting endorphins, you're getting serotonin happening, everything's happening. And I was really getting energized, but then being extremely exhausted at the end of the day and wiped out. And I think that also helped, because then I'd sleep really well, and then I'd wake up really fresh. So it was this really unexpected, strange, real obvious cycle of up, down, and around, you know, and it kept going around. Yeah. It was really
I think
good.
as well, if you're away from all your day-to-day and your to-do list, like that's hard. You know, I've got to cook dinner, I've got to do this thing with the kids' school, whatever. I'm hoping I did travel for 7 years in my life, and I was very free. I didn't have any responsibilities in that time. I didn't need insurances. I didn't have a car. I just traveled. So I'm hoping to get back to that, where all you've got to worry about is where you're going to eat breakfast and what sites you're going to see today. Yeah. I'm hoping that I do have the energy, because like you say, there'll be less cognitive impact, but I do get sensory overload too. So I worry about that. I went to a concert recently and that just wiped me out. And sometimes big crowds, I think, for whatever reason, maybe because you're looking and trying to not bump into them, or make sure if you have to engage that you're saying the right thing or whatever. I mean, I speak Spanish, but there's a lot more languages than that going on in Europe. So that's probably going to, anyway, I'll see. But at the moment, even I went to my team lunch on Friday and I was absolutely exhausted afterwards. But there's 13 of us here on the Sunshine Coast. And I guess because I haven't seen them and I'm really interested in what they've been up to. But I came home and I was wiped out. Just from that conversation, concentrating, I guess.
It's sensory overload. It's a huge thing. And you're very early on in the recovery process. Like you really are really early on.
Doesn't seem early on, does it? It's 6 months, but I guess, you've got the wisdom of time.
12 months will be early. 18 months will be early. 24 months will be early. You'll be getting improvement and improvement and improvement. It will continue to improve. But when you're at 24 months, you'll be going, he was right. Bill was right. Not that I want to be right. I'm
not a very patient person.
Well, this is the thing. You're going to learn patience. It's going to teach you to be patient and to have a long-term view. That's what's weird about me, is I've got this long-term view that I never had before. And I used to, I wasn't like, the Z generation, which is instant gratification all the time and everywhere, but I was impatient, and I never had the long-term view on anything. But now I've got the long-term view on so many things, an investment. Yeah, we'll sit on that. We'll just see what happens in 5 years. And if 5 years isn't the best thing, we'll see what happens in 10 years. And then it's like with a book, I'm writing a book. So I never knew that a book's going to take me 2.5 or 3 years to write, but it is. And it's simply because of all of those challenges that you have, that I also have, which is I cannot sit down and concentrate on a daily basis
For a long time.
To write a chapter on the book. I can push through the timeline, so I could sit there and force myself to be there, but I'm not writing anything. I'm not achieving anything.
And you'll be wiped out, and you won't be able to write for a few days.
Yeah, and it's a waste. So if I'm not feeling it, I don't sit down. But when I am feeling it, I might do 3 or 4 hours, and then I get a good chunk done, and then I feel really good about it. And I've just tried to see where those chunks are and squeeze them into my routine, and they're usually on a Saturday or a Sunday. And even though it's been so fragmented, my time sitting down and writing, even though it's been fragmented, I'm 8.5 chapters into a 10-chapter book. So,
well done.
We're getting there. And that's one of the things I gained from how long things take to change after stroke, like how long it takes for you to get back to, quote unquote, your normal life, or the
new
old,
life,
or your new life, or the new you, or your new identity, because it's got to emerge, and it's got to emerge in this weird stage of life, which is recovery. It's time to recover, it. And I tell people that you've got to 40, 50 or 60 and you've had a stroke, and you haven't been unwell in all that time. You've had your broken foot and your damaged knee and all that kind of stuff, and some heartache and some tough times and challenges, but you physically haven't been unwell until you had this stroke. Well, you've done all these other things all this time, and you hadn't have to stop and rest and look after yourself. Now it's just the season for rest and recovery. That's what it is. Right.
I'm very philosophical like yourself, and I guess patience has never been my virtue, and I'm very whenever something difficult's happened in my life, and there's been plenty, I've always gone, rather than, oh, poor me, because there's no point in that, I've gone, what's the lesson in this? Who's trying to teach me what lesson? And maybe patience is the lesson in this one, quite possibly is. Also, I guess, letting go, and it'll be okay with the business, because that's working out fine and you have enough. And yeah, it is rest, but it is hard doing that step change, that gear change, whatever you want to call it, when you have gone, you're a full tilt personality who's lived life to the fullest. You've done a lot, where I have in my 45 years. It's difficult to go, am I satisfied every day just doing my walk or my gym and my tiny bit of work or cooking a meal and that's it? Like, am I happy with that? So I'm still trying to figure out, what I've got to do to, find that satisfaction.
Yeah, it's fair enough. I completely understand. I was there as well. But then one day you'll look back and you'll go, my God, 5 years have passed.
Yeah. I've also got the double whammy of got the 4 teenagers. My partner's got 2 and I've got 2. And my youngest is about to turn 16 next month. And it's kind of like almost empty nesting as well. There are nights where you do go, hang on a second, noise, Mark, I'm on a recording. There are times where we go, there's no kids, what do we do with ourselves? So it's double whammy, because for some people, stroke or not, that would be a lot in itself, just figuring out who the new you is once your kids are all grown up and don't need you all the time.
Absolutely. Middle age is kind of where I'm at, and that's exactly what's happened. The kids have moved on, and we're both trying to work out who the hell we are and what we do. And I'm reinventing myself every 3 minutes because I have to, because I can't be doing the things that I've always done because my physical limitations don't allow it. And it's not fun. Some days, my deficits really cause me pain and suffering, and I don't want to be in a physical situation at work doing, that type of stuff. So I try to find ways to reinvent myself. That's part of the reason for the book. I did a project for that. I interviewed people. I came up with a hypothesis. I tried to prove it. I got chapters out of it. Now I'm writing to those chapters, and hopefully this book is going to end up with another book, and that's going to sell, and people are going to like it, and they're going to want to read the second one, and it's going to lead to public speaking, and I wanted this 10 years ago. I wanted all this stuff 10 years ago when I had no hope in my stroke brain of being able to commit to it, to anybody and anything. And it's taken 10 years to get to this stage. And I'm thinking, man, if I just get this over the line now, I'm going to be set in 10 years from now. Right? And I'm 48. And that's kind of what I'm thinking. So, and all the stuff I said to motivate you just now to get it over the line, and now you tell me you've got 4 teenagers. It's like, okay, hat off to you. You're doing an amazing job. Congratulations. Well done. You've come so far.
Well, they don't all live with us, but you think of your kids and you help them any way you can, wherever they are, whatever they're doing. But and I've written a couple of books too before, so I know your pain.
It's like somebody, I don't know who it was. It's like cutting yourself and bleeding all the time when you're writing a book. It just hurts. It's painful. It's difficult the whole time. It's just so hard.
It's a marathon. That's how I describe it. You got to keep going, keep going.
And I've never done anything physical long-term to understand what it's like. My work, I don't see it as being the long-term thing that I've done. It's just me. Like that happens easily. Work stuff happens easily, but I've never run a marathon. I've never played sport for decades and decades. I've never overcome something, that I made myself overcome that I didn't need to do, like a physical challenge or anything like that. I've never done anything like that. So this is really testing my resolve.
That's your first big one. Yeah, I have. Yeah. I did have a background in sport and climbing mountains and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, this is hard. This is up there with the hard stuff for sure. This stroke recovery.
I remember my brother, because I'm not a academic person either. My brother had been, right? And I remember saying to my brother, degrees in university, who needs all that shit, And he'd say to me, it's not about the degree and the university. It's about sticking to something for 4 years and then seeing it through to the end and getting a result. Now, he probably won't even remember telling me that. Well, I've never forgotten that. And this is what this book has become. It's become this
your degree.
My degree, my 4 years or 3 years at the moment, roughly, of putting in time and effort every single day, as much as I can to get a result out of it. And it started with the research, and it started with the finding people, and it started with, I've got to build I had built a podcast before that. And it's like, wow, I get it now. I totally get it. So long-term view, people, anyone who's listening, we're going to be around for a little while longer. We're meant to be here. So focus on the long-term view. So tell me about those physical endurance things that you did in the past. Like how physical were you?
I used to play age group water polo for New Zealand. So that was pretty physical stuff, boot camps and
wow.
Swimming. I used to do swimming, surf lifesaving competitively, at national level as well. So I was a very fit teenager, and I had to balance that with trying to be a teenager and go out and get my grades and work to get the money to play the sport, because they weren't funded sports. So I actually am so grateful for those experiences, because whenever I've had difficult things happen in my life, I do think I've got a lot of resilience from those times of just, getting through it because you had to, kind of thing. And then I've like walked the Inca Trail and done lots and lots of travel. That was hard. You're at altitude and you're thinking, I'm absolutely buggered, and are we setting up camp now? And then the guide's going, see this mountain here? We're going to do that now. And you're like, now? We're not done. I've got nothing left in the tank. But somehow you start plotting, and next minute you're going up the incline, and next minute you're nearly at the top, and then it's all on the downhill. So yeah, I've got all those reference points. But gosh, I mean, it's a difficult journey at 45 is what I am, the stroke recovery. And I can totally see how people have a choice. You can just choose to sit on the couch and eat unhealthy food and not work again and get down in the dumps and go down a really dark hole with your emotional state easily. You could easily just do that. So it does take an enormous amount of resilience to just go, no, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to push through. And you've got to have people around you who are supporting you for when those moments you're like, this is really hard, I can't do it, blah, blah, blah. Because there's, plenty of them. But I've gone back to some of those old sports friends. Probably they're still my friends because we shared so much together, the good things, the travel, the bad things, that they've been a good support for me. But unfortunate for me, a lot of them are overseas. I don't have so many locally. And my life pre-COVID was always on a plane for work, seeing them whichever town I was in. So I've definitely felt a bit lonely at times lying on the couch because I can't do anything. For a while there, I couldn't walk, I couldn't work, I couldn't drive, I couldn't do anything. And I remember my partner, people were saying to my partner, what can we do to help? And he said, just come visit. She just wants company, cup of tea. But then everyone's in such a busy life. Lots of people didn't come. Like they just, I think they meant to and they had good intentions, but they just, I get it. They've got kids, they've got work, they're busy, they've got their own priorities and things like that. So
not many people know how to deal with people who've had a stroke or a heart issue.
Probably that.
It's really confronting.
Maybe.
Yeah. You're in it, right? So you've got no choice. You're in it. You're going through it. But the other person who's not in it doesn't want to confront their possible mortality via you. They don't want to confront what it means to see Yvette, what it means for me to see Yvette like that.
I had plenty say to me, it's been a big wake-up call, Yvette. You're the healthy one. Like, I'm the one who's always kept my fitness a priority and eat pretty well. And sure, I used to like a drink. I haven't drunk for 6 months now, really. Odd wine, but very rare. And some of them have partied hard, and they're like, if you've had a stroke, like, you've made me really stop and think. And I'm like, well, if that's what the outcome is, that's good. Like, you should think about your health, None of us are getting any younger, and none of us are getting out alive. So do what you want with your body. It's your choice, but think about it hard.
Yeah, it's really confronting. At the beginning, I used to kind of take it negatively as well, to hear about people who didn't come visit or whatever. And it's like, okay, now I'm a little bit more forgiving, and it's like, I get it. I totally get it. It's really confronting. I'm the opposite. I'm the kind of person who likes to help out if I can, and I'll go and see people and I'll do what I can. Usually your offer is not taken up anyway. Usually when you say, let me know what you want me to do, most people just are thankful that you made them the offer.
That's true.
And I don't, but I did feel isolated, definitely felt isolated and lonely. And that's why I went to the National Stroke Foundation and became an ambassador, so that I could at least have, in all the downtime that I had, I could at least have something to look forward to and go and do, guys to speak on their behalf, and raise awareness about stroke prevention. So I'd know for a month or two that was booked and planned, and I would do everything that I had to do to make sure that I got there for that particular hour. And even then, sometimes I missed them because I forgot, or because I couldn't understand how the calendar worked and how reminders worked on my iPhone and all that kind of stuff. But that made me feel less alone when I found more people who understood me and what it's like. Because
I've really started realizing the value of like the stroke support groups, and I have run the stroke line more recently. I think first 6 months a bit in denial, a bit like, I'm all right. I can walk and talk. A lot of them can't. I'll be right. And I just thought it'd be this linear journey up of recovery, like a broken leg. But I've realized now it's not linear at all. It's round and back and up and down and back here. And so I more recently did go to a stroke group. I did get the time wrong. Like you say, it's hard to keep appointments and stuff. But now I've applied for another one. And then I found out about a woman who's a stroke survivor locally. And I plan to have a coffee with her, because I think it's so important, isn't it? Like, if you were to make new friends, you've been through such a big thing. It's part of who you are now. It's kind of hard. I'm such an authentic person. I can't just sit there and talk about the weather and small talk when that's not really who I am or what I'm interested in. I'm into the deep stuff and the real stuff. So I think it's helpful to connect with people who know what you're on about in that regard. Like, you don't have to have a stroke to be friends. I'm not saying that, but you have to be a good listener and empathetic when you've someone who's had a stroke, don't you? Like, it's too big of a thing to just pretend it never happened and it's not part of, it doesn't impact on your daily life. Yeah.
There's nothing worse than being with somebody who's ignorant to stroke. And I'm not having a go at them, like, because they've never had one and they don't know anyone who's ever had one. And it's really not their fault, right? But there's nothing worse than at that early stage in my recovery when they would say to me, "How are you going?" And I would tell them how I was going. And they would be looking at me going, "Oh shit, how do I get out of this conversation now?" Because they're in far too deep and they don't, and then now it's like, oh, I think I've got to go to the loo, or I've got to get out.
Don't you love as well when you go, "Oh yeah, I suffer quite a bit of fatigue," and they butt in and go, "I'm so tired at the moment as well." And you're just like, it's not the same.
Yeah. Oh, I got tired once.
Yeah, exactly. Or, I forget everything. Oh, me too. It's so bad. Old age. And it's like, I think it's a little different, but okay, let's run with that.
My another thing that happened to me, I was away on a trip, on a holiday, and we were walking up these stairs. It's in an old ancient Greek village. The stairs are a mess at the best of times, and my left leg doesn't do what the right leg does. It doesn't come up every time I lift it as much as my right leg. And if I'm tired, it's a bit lazier and the rest of it. And I've tripped over the steps, and my cousin was there, who I see once a decade. And I fell over the step going up, and I said, I cursed and complained about my leg. It's my leg, it missed the step. And she goes, "Oh, I miss the steps too every once in a while." She goes, "It's all good, don't worry about it." She's trying to make me feel better, and I'm thinking what you're thinking. I'm going, no, it's not that. It's not that version of it. But yeah, everyone tries to kind of make things better, and I used to not pick my people well at the beginning when they'd say, "How are you?" Whereas now I'm a bit nicer to people who I know are ignorant about stroke, and I don't want to put them in a uncomfortable situation where they have to now listen to me blabber about all my problems and all my challenges. So you learn who are the listeners and who are the ones that you can engage with.
That's very true. I talked to a psychologist and they said, put people on trial, which sounds like heavy, but what they mean by that, and it really resonates for me, is try them out, share a bit, see if they really listen and if they really care. And if they really don't, then maybe they're not for you. Yeah. But yeah, you have to put a few people on trial till you get to the good ones, that there is actually a two-way thing going where you can, it's not all about me, but you can give to them and they are actually actively listening to you, and being empathetic rather than breezing over it with, I get tired too all the time, just the same for me. And you're like, no, that's not the case.
I had some weirdo friends who I thought were just terribly non-emotional, and I thought they were never going to be able to step up, and they were the ones that blew me away. They came out of nowhere.
Oh yeah, surprises.
Yeah, and then I was like, sorry, this doesn't compute for me. I cannot understand how this person who has behaved and acted and spoken this way for the entire time I've known him, my entire life, has now come and been the guy who decided that he was going to set up a exercise regime for me, take me to the swimming pool, have a
That's
sauna
good
with
effort.
me. And it's like, who are you? You weirdo. Like, what did you do to the old person that I used to know? Like, what happened? And it was such a
Maybe
lovely
you were the
surprise.
catalyst for change. That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah. It was
Good
such a
outcome.
lovely surprise. It was just a real. So there was both sides of it. There was people who couldn't deal with it, and then there was the people who could and stepped up big time. And that's okay for either one of them. It's okay that some couldn't. The ones that don't, who I think that's another blessing, because I think then they give space for other people to actually be there. So I think instinctively they're doing the right thing. They know that they can't support the way that I need support. And instead of trying and failing, they're just going, let me give space to other people to turn up. And
That's a good philosophy too. Some people just don't have the capacity. I've been in phases of my life where I've wanted to support someone, but I had so much of my own stuff going on, I just really couldn't. So I do understand that as well.
and if you're not emotionally intelligent and you don't know how to practice it and how to express it and how to allow people to be vulnerable and how to be vulnerable yourself, it's going to be a difficult thing to go to a stroke survivor and then try and, work it out. I think the best thing that people could do, if people were listening now and they wanted to know what to do, is just like you said, turn up, have a cup of tea, bring a plate of food, and that's about it. There's not much more is necessary.
Listen, crack jokes, share,
Yeah,
make it a two-way conversation.
yeah, for sure. So, tell me about the kids that are at home. How old are they?
At the moment, and it does change, it's a bit of a revolving door. And there's only the 15, nearly 16-year-old at home, my daughter. So she's been with us ongoing. But at times we've had my son and we've had my partner's kids for, a 5-month stint, a 3-month stint in the last, 12 to 18 months as well. So it changes all the time.
Yeah.
If they want to come, they're welcome, basically.
Yeah, I hear you. Yep. So, what's been the hardest thing for you in this journey so far?
Oh, that's a big question. What's been the hardest thing? I think just accepting the adjustment to my life. I'm just a very driven person. I've always gone and done a lot of stuff with a very full plate, and realizing I can't just do what my brain wants to do now, that I have to work within the limitations of my cognitive deficits and my physical abilities right now, is hard pill to swallow. But I just try and keep positive and think, like you say, it's 6 months in, and I feel like I just have to, and maybe I'm putting too much pressure on myself, walk a bit of a tightrope, like sleep well, eat well, don't drink alcohol, the whole lot, because I do feel like if I take one step wrong, usually I go, that late night, look what happened, So I feel like keeping that strict can be a bit hard too, because you want to live a bit more fluidly and say, I went to that concert, it really didn't work out well because of the sensory overload. I got offered another concert ticket the next day and another the next day, free, completely free. And I love concerts, but that's made me go, I don't think you can go to indoor, very loud concerts for a while. Like, don't test that one out for another 6 months or so. Just keep doing the recovery, which makes me a bit sad because I've always really loved live music. That's part of who I am. But for now, it's not what I can do. So I'll work on do other stuff that makes me happy. It's finding that other stuff that you can do is a bit tricky.
I can relate to that part that you said, but you're right. You're doing all the right things. Absolutely guarantee you're doing all the right things, even if it feels like you're missing out on some stuff that you've previously not, you haven't missed out on. You're going and getting counseling. You're not drinking alcohol. It's really, really, really important for any stroke survivor not to drink alcohol for at least 12 months. I didn't drink alcohol for 5 years.
Wow.
Right. And then even now, I had 2 beers last night. It took me about 3 hours to drink them. And it's not nice. Like, I didn't enjoy drinking what they did to me. I enjoy the beer, but I don't enjoy what they did to me. But I had it over dinner. So it was kind of better than just drinking without dinner. So 100% think you're doing the right thing there. You know, sleep better. Absolutely. Always have a routine to try and get into bed, say by a time that you know is going to get you enough sleep so that when you wake up in the morning, your battery is fully charged, you know, whatever, however big that
I
battery
have
is.
huge sleeps these days, like 10 and 12 hours, massive.
Yeah.
I used to survive on 4 and 6 hours, normal.
Wow.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, see, that's important because that's when the brain heals. It heals the most during sleep, and new things that you've learned and new things that you overcome and new neuronal structures and all that, they get a lot of time to really sort of embed when you've had sleep and when you go through the REM cycle, and you know you actually get that deep sleep that we all need. You know, it really makes a big difference. Being physical is going to help you, and avoiding concerts. I did that. I avoided football matches where I had free tickets to grand finals and all that kind of stuff. I avoided concerts. I think I've only been to 1 or 2 concerts in the last 10 years, and both of them were, one of them was AC/DC and the other one was Metallica. You know, they were
Loud.
really, really loud. But I went with the ear plugs that tradies use on site, because I couldn't be there in any other way. I would not have lasted the entire duration of the concert.
Yeah, I took my noise cancelling headphones. I did take precautions, and I did that when the lights were a bit much. But yeah, and I felt okay at the time. I enjoyed it, but it was the next day when the head's just like that. I went, okay, it's not ready for that. But you got to test it, don't you? And you know, this is where the medical professionals can't tell you you're ready for this or not ready for that.
Yeah.
So they tell me, go try it. You'll soon know, but you've got to suffer the consequences.
Yeah. One of the tips that I could give people listening, and maybe you, is if you're going to plan a concert or something that's going to be out of the ordinary and you want to definitely go because you don't want to miss it, and you know tomorrow is going to be a terrible day, make sure your calendar's clear for 2 days after that so you can really recuperate. And I used to do that a lot. I used to make sure I'm not missing out on this concert and I've got nothing to do the next day and the day after. And it really made it possible for me to feel like, again, I wasn't missing out on something. You're doing well.
That's the acceptance part. You're right. Because even if I did say I've got the day free, I guess I'm still in this mode of, I'm just wasting the day. But, you know, you can't. You just got to go. This is a Netflix and, you know, lie on the couch day or whatever. That's it.
Yeah.
It's like,
I 6 months ago, I went through that. I decided that I was going to do nothing on this particular day. I was going to wake up in the morning and I was going to sit on my bum on the couch or wherever, somewhere around the house, and just chill out all day. And then I made a post on Instagram. I decided I'm going to do nothing today, and I'm feeling guilty about it. You know, and it's so weird. Like, why do you feel guilty about it?
Yeah. But that's also part of it all, isn't it? I'm led to believe, you do feel guilty. It's all the adjustment stuff.
Yeah. And what I'm doing, if you later on, if I got the opportunity to philosophize about it, look, what I'm doing is actually, I am doing something. That something is recuperating, resting, recovering. I'm actually physically participating in that by sitting on my bum and not engaging in other things that would make my mind busy or all this other stuff going on. So it's like, okay. Yeah. Exactly like that.
Yeah.
Yvette, I really appreciate you reaching out and connecting and becoming a guest on my show. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us on today's episode. I hope you enjoyed this interview. If you are a stroke survivor with a story to share about your experience, come and join me on the show. Interviews are not scripted. You do not have to plan for them. All you need to do to qualify is to be a stroke survivor or care for somebody who is a stroke survivor, or you are one of the fabulous people that help stroke survivors on the road to recovery. Go to recoveryafterstroke.com/contact, fill out the contact form, and as soon as I receive it, I will respond with more details on how you can choose a time that works for you and me to meet over Zoom. Thanks again for being here and listening. I really appreciate you. See you on the next episode.
Importantly, we present many podcasts designed to give you an insight and understanding into the experiences of other individuals. Opinions and treatment protocols discussed during any podcast are the individual's own experience, and we do not necessarily share the same opinion, nor do we recommend any treatment protocol discussed. All content on this website and any linked blog, podcast, or video material controlled this website or content is created and produced for informational purposes only and is largely based on the personal experience of Bill Gassiamis. The content is intended to complement your medical treatment and support healing. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice and should not be relied on as health advice. The information is general and may not be suitable for your personal injuries, circumstances, or health objectives. Do not use our content as a standalone resource to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease for therapeutic purposes or as a substitute for the advice of a health professional. Never delay seeking advice or disregard the advice of a medical professional, your doctor, or your rehabilitation program based on our content. If you have any questions or concerns about your health or medical condition, please seek guidance from a doctor or other medical professional. If you are experiencing a health emergency or think you might be, call 000 if in Australia, or your local emergency number immediately for emergency assistance, or go to the nearest hospital emergency department. Medical information changes constantly. While we aim to provide current, quality information in our content, we do not provide any guarantees and assume no legal liability or responsibility for the accuracy, currency, or completeness of the content. If you choose to rely on any information within our content, you do so solely at your own risk. We are careful with links we provide. However, third-party links from our website are followed at your own risk, and we are not responsible for any information you find there.